The purpose of Wealth Talk is to educate, inform, and hopefully entertain you on the subject of building your wealth. Wealth Builders recommends you should always take independent financial, tax, or legal advice before making any decisions around your finances.
Welcome to episode 137 of Wealth Talk. My name is Christian Rodwell, the Membership Director for Wealth Builders, and I'm joined today by our founder, Mr. Kevin Whelan. Hi, Kevin.
Hello, Chris. As always, good to be with you again.
Yes, and here we are, episode 137, and we're just a few weeks away from our very first live webinar of 2022. So we mentioned it the last couple of weeks, but Wednesday the 9th of February is the date if you'd like to jump on live with myself and Kevin. And Kevin, we're just really going to be sharing what we do and how we help our members on that webinar and walking through our recurring revenue roadmap.
Yeah, well, look, there is a process, right? So wealth is a scientific process, I believe. It's teachable. It can be followed. We've created a step-by-step process. And for most people, it takes somewhere around 5 years to do it. So we're not saying get rich quick. We're saying get rich for sure if you follow the path. So crumbs, we're all curious about a roadmap. You know, how long ago did we have GPS, and now we can't live without it? Well, this is a GPS system to get you to a place of complete financial independence. And there's something wrong in society if only 5% of people find their way to the inner side of the maze to do that, Chris. So other people are getting lost along the way somewhere, aren't they?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're actually going to spend the next few weeks just really diving into our roadmap on the podcast. So anyone who, finds that interesting can then jump on and actually see us sort of illustrate that live on screen on the webinar. So to register for that webinar, head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/academy webinar. And you mentioned there, Kevin, the big problem we know that exists is 95% of people in the UK never achieve financial independence. And people's frustration is trading time for money. And we know leaving a legacy is really important for people. When we do our induction calls with new members, we really get to know them. We map everything out on a kind of giant mind map together on screen. And it always links back to more time with family and, just more time to do the things that you want. So freedom of choice, really. And we know there's 7 freedoms, which are one of the steps in the roadmap.
Yeah, well, look, any form of wealth, some people might say it's all about money. Of course, it isn't. Freedom isn't measured just in money. What money does is an enabler. So if it's freedom to be where you want to be, freedom of location, whether it's something like me, it's freedom to be creative, so I'm not told what to do. I've got the financial wherewithal that I can choose what I want to do and how I want to do it. Whether it's the freedom to spend time with people you really like to spend time with. I mean, I love working with you, and I love working with Paul, and I love working with the community. But crumbs, I'd hate to be having to work with someone who I didn't respect and appreciate in a job that I hated. And I'm not saying that's for everyone, but of course, you've got freedom of relationship, including your own family, and so much of this boils down to not losing. I was talking to somebody the other day and about this very thing, and he said, I said, we were talking about Wealth Builders for Families, and he said, my dad was never there. He simply wasn't there because he was working so hard for a living. He forgot to spend time with his family, and this is, can be true. And also in my case, my dad spent less time because unfortunately he died early. So all of these things have a touch point and a reason for people, I think, to want to create financial independence for themselves, because the money enables all of the other freedoms. And if you want to know what all 7 freedoms are, there must be a download somewhere, Chris, because we teach it in the program, don't we?
Yeah, well, definitely we'll cover that on the webinar. But I think a good thing for anyone who is listening to this podcast is actually download a copy of our roadmap. Then you can actually follow along as we're discussing it. So you can get a free copy of the roadmap. Just head to wealthbuilders.co.uk/roadmap. And we're going to be going through stage 1 today. Now, there's 3 stages to the roadmap, Kevin. Stage 1 is all about building confidence. And that includes step 1, which is really getting clear on mindset. Step 2 is the foundation. And step 3 is the roof. So that's what we're going to be covering this week. And then next week, we'll cover stage 2, which is all about building knowledge, and stage 3 the week after, which is all about building assets. So looking forward to that. So some of the things that hold people back, Kevin, we know that lack of knowledge sometimes holds people back. Lack of time is another thing we hear a lot. Some people just don't feel they've got the funds or not enough starting capital. Others are not sure where to begin, or they just simply haven't got a plan. Hearing people talking about fear, and that's often the fear of making mistakes. Information overload, so many reasons that hold people back, Kevin. So step 1 mindset is really helping people to sort of overcome inertia, is just to, understand that there is a process, it's tried and tested, others are following that process and getting results. But these things do hold people back, Kevin. So it's important, to attack that really at the beginning.
I think it really is, because if you don't have enough confidence, which is all about step 1, to make a start, you'll never become financially independent. And that's why, for the most part, we characterize the people who we bump into along our journey, Chris, as we talk to people. And of course, we talk to people in the hope and the ambition that they'd want to take that responsibility, spend a few years to become financially independent, and then they're free for the rest of their life. But obviously some people don't take the lesson, and we characterize them, don't we, with 3 of our 4 Ds, which is interesting. And I'll just briefly mention those, because maybe you'll see yourself, if you think about it, if you're not currently financially independent. And this is the same in America, by the way. It's not just the UK that these traits are out there, and these numbers of 95% of people not making it and only 5% do. Yet all the knowledge is available. So it's definitely not a lack of knowledge. In many cases, probably too much knowledge. People get bombarded with information. It's almost like trying to get a cup of water out of Niagara Falls. It's just a deluge of stuff, and people don't know where to start. They don't know who to trust. A whole combination of things. But the characteristics that we see are the drifters, which is D number 1. Those people who go round and round and round and round the same roundabout, constantly looking for something else. Oh, I just need the information on that. Oh, I just need information on that. And they keep going round the same thing, always looking as if that exit from the roundabout is the right one. But in reality, they're spinning. And we see that all the time. And if you've ever felt that you just got to read the next book, you've just got to look at the next course, you've just got to talk to the next person, then you might be a drifter. The next one are the DIYers, those people who will consume lots of information, but of course they won't believe that anybody can help them. They won't believe in the power of community. They won't believe in the power of connection. They won't believe that it's enjoyable. So they prefer to do things entirely on their own. And there's nothing wrong with that per se. Some people are more geared that way, and that's fine. But there's so much power in the who. We believe in the principle, Dan Sullivan's principle of, coach in the US and Canada and the UK, who says it's the who's that count. It's who, not how. And there's always a great who can give you a shortcut to where you want to get to. And I mean shortcut as in an intellectual shortcut to try and help you get to your wealth plan, your wealth objective. And we get more detail of that in stage 1. But once you've established that goal, you get there more quickly with people on your side, and that's really fundamental. So DIYers will often struggle because they won't open themselves. And then we've got the delegators who kind of hope that somebody in a smart suit can help them and will take responsibility. And we see that in the stock market, don't we? So many people in the UK and the US just delegate their money away. And as I've said so many times before, when you delegate very quickly, that turns into abdication. And abdication means you've got no control. You really don't know what you're doing. And you're just kind of hanging on and hoping for the best, which in reality, therefore, means it's a slow journey, and one that if you're trying to create wealth, which is repeatable, recurring income, you can't get that in the stock market because you never know when it's going to be taken away from you, as we've seen so many times in history when the stock market falls. So, we don't like the delegation. Yes, you can delegate some things, but with confidence and with accountability. So if you're a delegator, hoping for the best, a drifter, well, just going around in circles, or you're a DIYer, probably this isn't going to be a good home for you because you'll be found out. But what we want is the dynamics. The dynamic recognizes that there's the influence of other people and other connections and other things that can speed you on your way and actually make the whole journey faster, safer, and fundamentally more enjoyable. And that's what gives me pleasure. And that's why I carry on doing this, Chris, because I see the transformation that happens when we get to work with people. And I look forward to seeing and talking to those people where I ask them and look them in the eye if I meet them and say, who are you now? Often it's a drifter. Who do you want to be? I want to be a dynamic. Okay. And if they make that commitment to do that, and of course we guide them, then, it's a journey that's assured. And I don't think anybody who commits to the journey doesn't get there, doesn't achieve financial independence. It's just taking that first step. And there's so many things that hold people back from that very first step, Chris.
Yeah, that's right. And also people overestimating like how much progress they can make in 12 months and underestimating how much progress they can make in 5 years. And I think actually we had a comment in our private Facebook group this week from Alex, which, is a great example of that. Alex is saying, I joined Wealth Builders back in November 2020. I could write a short novel about how far I've come as a person since that time. The endless amount of things I've learned from the content here and the amazing people has been truly life-changing. I've generated nothing in my thermometer yet, but I have absolutely no issue with that. I have a purpose and a very clear vision for my life. I'm working towards that vision, and money will be a byproduct of achieving that. My mindset is completely different. I cannot even articulate how elevated my thinking has become. The habits I'm forming and the person I am becoming is really exciting. I never would have started on this journey without the support of this community.
Cool. I mean, what's interesting, right, and is the humility there. And that's a very key trait that we look for. We look for humility. People are open to saying, hey, I'm not the finished article yet. And also admitting that perhaps, it's not as far as you'd like to be in terms of generating income. But generating income is like planting seeds. You can't just keep looking. You can't keep digging them up to see how they're coming along. Sometimes the seeds take a while to plant, and everybody gets there in the end, but just at a different pace. The same as kids. I've got a grandson. He's making a little bit of noise in the background, but that's all part of the authenticity of this, Chris. And I can't hurry him up. He was going to some tests or some assessments, and they were saying in the assessment that at this age the kid should be able to say 4 words. He's just gargling at the moment and garbling, but we're not worried about that just because people should be, or kids should be, saying 4 words. He's not saying 4 words at the minute. I mean, my mother says I didn't walk till I was 14 months, and my brother didn't speak till he was about 2. So, and there's nothing wrong with him, and there's nothing wrong with me. So it's not a race when you're a child, and it's not a race when you're building one.
Yeah. And now, step 1, mindset. One of the key elements here is wealth dynamics. And that's something we've talked about a lot on previous podcasts. It's an entrepreneurial assessment that we give all of our members a token. They can take that, find out which of the 8 different entrepreneurial profiles they are. And we know that a key aspect here is that wealth flows to value. So step 1 is really understanding how you can become of most value to others or to the marketplace. And wealth dynamics, we believe, is one of the best ways of identifying that. And, we've had so many great, again, feedback from members talking about when they understood their wealth dynamic profiles, how it allowed them to focus. Certainly for the creators who just love to kind of keep, chopping and changing to the next big idea that comes along. But when they focus, that's when they start getting real results. So wealth dynamics, we work really well together, Kevin. You're a star profile, so you're the visionary, whereas I'm more of the tempo energy as a deal maker. So taking those great ideas that you have and then making sure that the team is implementing those.
The other thing that I think is valuable, not just the compass point, which it gives you as to where your best value is, where you're going to be in flow, where you're going to be in a state where it's going to be easier for you to create wealth rather than forcing yourself in a path that might not be natural for you. And why would you try and row uphill? Just go with the flow, and that's the key when it comes to wealth dynamics. But the other thing is that, the program is available for two people. And often we'll see a challenge with wealth when two people have a difference of opinion, husband and wife or partners or whatever it would be. And we see that once the wealth dynamics are done and we discuss it as a group and we discuss it in families, they begin to understand, maybe even for the first time, either why they're really gelling or why they're really disconnecting with each other, and how you manage that and how you manage that conflict, particularly when it comes to attitudes to risk, attitudes to debt, attitudes to leverage, certain assets. There's a whole raft of different emotions and things that come out when those conversations are had. And I think it's best done in that open way. So wealth dynamics, definitely a key. And we recruit using wealth dynamics, don't we? And we always want our members to know their wealth dynamic. And okay, you've given some language there, Chris, but it's not critical you understand the language of star and deal maker or anything like that. It's just critical to know that there is a tool that will help you get where you want to get to faster and will help you understand how best to connect with others as you begin to appreciate there are different types of thinking, different types of learning, types of people building wealth. When you appreciate that, it becomes quite a revelation when you start building relationships with others, which of course is what dynamic people do. They build relationships when the DIYers, of course, probably never do. So they don't need to understand anybody else's wealth dynamic because they ain't bothered about anybody else.
Yeah, and one of the features of the Academy program are our buddy groups, and we look at people's profiles and help put them together with complementary profiles. So if you love the details, but someone else loves the creativeness and someone else loves connecting with people, we put those together and, similar interests, and that you can really see the difference that makes as well.
Well, if you think about it another way, Chris, right? So when let's imagine, we're in a vehicle and we talked about GPS and a roadmap. So, vehicle would seem to be a very appropriate analogy. When you're in a vehicle, you've almost always got blind spots. And you know that because they tell you, watch out for your blind spot. And then they build technology, don't they, where in my car, when a car's coming up on the inside, there's a little light that flashes that tells me, oh, blind spot. Somebody's coming in to your blind spot. Now, the whole point about wealth dynamics is different people see different things. Different people ask different questions, and different people see a way of doing things or have an ability that you don't have. So when you get all the wealth dynamics covered, you've got a 360 vision. It's like driving your car with 360 cameras, but somebody's monitoring the cameras for you, So it just makes the whole thing flow much more easily when you've got that. So kind of high tech and high touch. So I like the wealth dynamics and what it does.
Yeah, kind of links back to the who, not how again, doesn't it?
It does indeed, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so step one is mindset. So
that's a lot. That's just in step one, and we haven't really covered it. The other thing in step one, which is my favorite piece actually, Chris, so I just want to make sure it isn't missed here. So in step one, we encourage people to think about creating a family wealth business. So thinking about their wealth as if it were a business that will last 150 years, and being the pioneer of that business and giving that business a name and giving that business an emblem or a logo or a crest, whatever tickles your fancy. And we see when the families get involved and the kids get involved, we get some fantastic logos and fantastic things that serve to almost give people a sense of future vision. And I think that was really important to me, Chris, if anybody knows my story, and important to so many, as we see when they're so proud to display their family wealth businesses and their logos. And that's a big one for me.
So step one is all about you, getting clear on yourself. And then that moves us nicely into stage two, which we call the foundation. And this is really understanding the fundamentals of building wealth, and where we start with work income versus asset income. So this is a mindset shift for a lot of people, Kevin, isn't it?
It's so fundamental. It's probably the most fundamental difference that needs to be appreciated if you're truly going to be a wealthy individual or family. Because if you trade time for money, you're then vulnerable it's uncertain, it's unpredictable, because we know, just look at current circumstances, one thing can change that, and then nobody gets an income forever. So, the old Buffett line, which is find a way to generate recurring income, otherwise you'll be working till you die. And that's the challenge. So the idea of creating assets, so you own a flow of income, so that income recurs, so you don't have to show up for the money to show up. And that's so fundamental. Now, people get it, but they don't really get the ways that they can build that flow of assets. So, we talk about that further on, but just getting the appreciation of that is quite fundamental. And I think most people do get it, and then they have to dive deeper into, well, how do I create it? And of course, in a podcast like this, Chris, we're not going to get into the hows. We're just sort of, painting a picture, aren't we, really? Giving a bit of a background to what it's all about.
Absolutely, yeah. And once you really understand then that asset income is the only way to stop trading time for money, then you have to identify, well, how much asset income do you need on a monthly basis? And it leads us into the 5 levels of wealth. So we know we have our 5 levels, and 95% of the population are at insecurity, which is at the bottom there. And the first step, the first goal for those members who are not yet there is to get to financial security. And what we mean by security is to really assess, well, how much do you actually need as a family on a monthly basis to cover your essential outgoings. So we kind of call it the lockdown lifestyle. So we're not talking about going out and having lots of nice, fancy restaurant meals or holidays. It's really just, how much you need on a monthly basis to kind of sustain yourself, to keep the essentials covered. Once you've locked that in, then that's the first target.
Yeah, and the other point about that, Chris, which I think is really interesting. I was talking to a prospective family working with just yesterday, in fact, and I was talking to the guy, and I said, "Look, the security figure is so powerful. It doesn't sound exciting, and in their case, the security figure was $5,000 a month, and the reason it was so fundamental." And there are 2 points to this. Number one is that if you get the amount of money flowing, then it allows you to stop trading time for money. In other words, it's his pathway to get out of the job, which he doesn't like. In fact, what he's saying to me now is, since he's been working with us, he's going into his job, whether it's at home or at the office, and he's thinking about building wealth. He's not thinking about the job. He's imagining being outside of that. And I'm saying, but it takes time to get to $5,000. But once you've got the $5,000, then you can give up the day job. And therefore, that gives you so much more time, and that accelerates you on your process. So that's the second part. So, one, it gives you the freedom to stop trading time for money. And then secondly, it gives you the leverage, more time available to spend on wealth building activities, or more time to spend with your family, as many people do when they get to that stage. They create space to be able to do things that, they couldn't pick up the kids from school, or they couldn't do certain things that they want to do now. And that's what the whole beauty of getting to security is. And we encourage people to focus to get to that point first. And, that's often, you could just got to think that through. And it's a difficult thing because you've got to work out your outgoings. You've got to work it out. We're not saying penny pinch. And as you say, Chris, we're not saying it's a lifestyle that you're going to aspire to, but it's a lifestyle that you can accept in the short term as you continue to build your wealth. So very, very fundamental stage in and how to move forward.
Yeah, I can certainly relate to that gentleman you mentioned there, Kevin, because I remember when I was working in my job, that was literally all I was thinking about was, any lunch break, evening, morning, weekends, just working on, the things that I was passionate about, building up my additional income outside of the JOB. And I'm sure many of our listeners are in that.
Well, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for people who, not that we're saying there's anything wrong with the job. We're not. We're just saying don't depend on it. And in some cases, if you can get a job you love to do, that's absolutely fine. But in the end, that job is, a false sense of security, unless if you decided that actually what you want to do is give up the current job and do a different job, or work at the current job but work 2 days a week and not 5 days a week because you're stressed or you're going to be burning yourself out. Nothing wrong with that, but that's the difference, isn't it? If you got a recurring income coming in and you don't have to work at it flat out full time as other people are, then you're giving yourself more freedom. So
the safest way is definitely to transition across, isn't it? To start building up some recurring income and prove to yourself that you can do that. And then, as you say, start to maybe reduce your hours in the job if you can. Definitely not just quit the job and hope for the best.
No, we're not saying that. We're not saying sack your boss, guys. We're saying transition, build a bridge and cross over the bridge. And the beauty of this is so many people have already crossed. So the bridge is a path well trodden. And we kind of are the guides, really, try and show you the pathway that would work for you. So you don't go down a blind alley or a cul-de-sac, whatever other analogy we can give on a road. Nothing wrong with sometimes getting lost, but you don't want to be permanently stuck in a place where you don't want to be.
Okay, so we're still in step 2, foundation. We've talked about the importance of understanding work income versus asset income, then identifying how much you need to be financially secure, and then beyond that, obviously, financial independence. But also, the foundation is about sort of plugging any leaks that you might have in your life. So, debt is something that may be a concern or an issue for some people, Kevin. So we have a process which we actually covered a couple of weeks ago on a podcast, which we call debits, which is just a really in-depth review of the money flowing out of your life. And we know that when members go through this process, they can generally save a few £100, and then that money can be reallocated to start building wealth.
Yeah, and here's the thing. When we get into the foundation, we'll often get comments like, "Oh, well, I've done this before. I've looked at this before. I've considered this," but invariably they haven't, because they haven't gone through the detail because they weren't motivated. Particularly those people who are less inclined to detail. So we covered this. Which podcast was that, Chris? You could signpost that, because I think we covered debits in quite a bit of detail, did we not?
Yeah, it was 135.
All right, only recently, right? So worthy of just one mention: debt, education, bills, insurance, tax, and stock market fees, which we've amended. Well, not least because one of our members saved $15,000 per annum. That's highly paid work, right? If you can spend, I think she spent an hour. If you can spend an hour and generate $15,000 a year, that's a hell of a return on your investment. Okay, so these are things you could do. Not everybody's going to find 15,000, but the average is probably around 1,000. And increasingly now, there are so many other ways that you can prevent things that are going out that shouldn't go out. We're not saying penny pinch or save your way. You can't save your way to wealth. But what you can do, though, is redirect the leaks. Like going, back to another vehicle. The starting point of all boats when it comes to the season, when they're doing what they're doing, is they get the boat out on dry dock, and they're making sure there's no leaks, so everything's watertight. And similarly with the building, you're going to do some preparatory work to make sure the building is watertight, and that's the essence of doing that work. And we just encourage people to go with the flow and allow us to guide them and to show them what other people have saved. And one of the biggest ones, Chris, is not just saving money, but finding money, isn't it? Lost money that people have just consigned to some kind of memory, particularly pensions. It's been the area where we found most money, from 50,000 in one case to 100,000 in another, where people think, "Oh no, I was only there a couple of years, or I was only there a short period of time." But they got pensions that they didn't realize, and then they can put that money to work. And that's the key. It's not just about saving money. It's about whatever you save, you plant it, whether it's elimination of debt, that could be a good use. Whether it's to buy some education because you need to enhance your education, because that's a key part of wealth building, of course it is. Or whether it's to invest in the stock market or invest in something that will start to build your wealth. So it's almost like creating seeds and then planting the seeds. And that's a very good analogy to be considering when you do your debits. And so many people do that and then find that money gets put to work, which is starting them off. It's almost giving a little burst of energy that they can see that their wealth is genuinely starting to grow pretty early on. I mean, probably in month one, they're starting to find that, right?
Absolutely, yeah. So we're walking through our recurring revenue roadmap. We're walking through stage 1 today. And we've covered off step 1, which is mindset. Step 2 here, foundation. You talked about being waterproof at the bottom. And if you think about the Wealth Builders logo, we have our foundation at the bottom. We have our 7 pillars in the middle. And then sat on top of that, we have the roof. And the roof is step 3 of our roadmap, Kevin. Maybe you can explain the importance of having a strong...
Yeah. The roof is such a critical thing. Like any building, the first thing you want to do is get that watertight. Not just prevent water from ingressing from below, but to stop it from ingressing from above. So you have to protect the roof or put on a roof. And the roof, in our case, is doing some things that many people start or they think about, or they get round to it. I don't know what a round to it is. I'm not really sure. I've seen it often enough, though. People don't get round to it. And the issue for me is, I think we did some stats on it, Chris, didn't we? Around about 40%, only 40% of people who get round to doing their roof. And their roof is a combination of things. It's making sure their wills are up to date, putting powers of attorney in place to make sure if something happens to you in either your finances or your mental state or your health, that somebody else can make decisions and your money can be protected. It's also looking at some complicated areas, but nonetheless important areas, like do you own your home as joint tenants and tenants in common? And it's really important you understand it, because it then serves to help you understand how you can better protect it in the future, particularly from things like care costs. And there are many others, Chris, in the roof. There are about 6 or 7 things we cover in total. But the real importance of this, and the reason why it's so important to me is, when my father died with, quite a decent business at the time, unfortunately, he thought, like many business owners and like many people in jobs, I suppose, as well, that they were kind of invincible, that life was going to carry on as normal. And then when, unfortunately, it wasn't for him, then, he didn't have a business succession plan for somebody else to take over the business. The business died. He didn't have a will, so that left a mess. Didn't have life cover, left a debt. Just didn't do stuff. Not because he was a bad person. Of course he wasn't. But he just didn't get round to it, right? And this is the question that I just hate people giving me the answer. I didn't got round to it. Well, our role at Wealth Builders is you get round to it. You get it done, because when you protect your family, the peace of mind, and so often, Chris, our members tell us, I'm so glad I did that. I feel that it's a weight off my mind. I feel that my family are safe, so that if something happens to me, my family will be financially independent. And all of those things are an important part of the roof. Way, way, way before you start actually building your wealth, you're just shoring up what you've got and making sure if something happens to you, if the worst happens, your family are going to be in good shape. And that's all you can do with your loved ones, and as a parent, as a grandparent. All you can do is make sure people are taken care of if your plans don't get fulfilled.
And that covers the first 3 steps of our roadmap. And, we've shared the elements there. So people can go off and do these things, right? But the importance is making sure they get it done. And as you said, Kevin, that's what we are here to provide our members of the Wealth Builders Academy. So, we love doing that. We have great feedback every day, every week inside the community. So it's a very supportive place. And, I think we'll look forward to covering next week stage 2, which is all about building knowledge, Kevin. So this is where we start looking at those 7 pillars and understanding the importance of leverage, and then helping people sort of eliminate some of those ideas that might be causing them overwhelm, so that they can get clear on the right strategy for them. And that's really where we start to put together their unique wealth plan.
Yeah, that's right. So, this is kind of, for some people now, they might, that sounds a bit overwhelming, but it isn't. It's step 1, step 2, step 3, then we take an assessment, we're looking at that, then we're going on. So it's not difficult if you follow a process. What people do is get sidetracked, waylaid, and off they go round and round the roundabout again. And consequently, they don't get round to it. And this is what we want them to do. So it's really important, even if you don't join our program, that's fine. If you're enjoying our materials, if you're a DIY and you want to take some of the actions on your own, nothing wrong with that. Go do it, but do it properly. And if we can help you in some way and signpost some things that you can do and why it's important to do them, we'll be more than happy to do that, because we do want to help anybody who's in our community, whether it's free or paid for, Chris. So join our free community. You can tell people where to go on that, Chris, and also download the podcast Wealth Talk, and we're sharing information on that all the time. And tell somebody else to do it. Of course, I know you're listening right now, but let somebody else in on this secret as well, because we want to help 50,000 people become financially independent. And maybe you can nudge somebody else across the bridge, either with you or somebody you care about who you think this would be good information for them to have as well. So there you go, Chris. That's the foundational element of step one in the Wealth Builder Roadmap, recurring revenue roadmap. Looking forward to sharing the second part of that next week. And where would people go now, Chris, if they want to register for the webinar?
wealthbuilders.co.uk/academy webinar, and that is on Wednesday, the 9th of February at 7:30 p.m. And we'll be inviting some of our members on there. So not only will it be a chance to hang out with you and me, but just to hear from our members as well, talking through those steps and how that's helping them to build their wealth.
Yeah, and there'll be an opportunity to interact with us in some way with questions in the chat box and so on. So looking forward to that. And of course, if you ever want to talk to any of us, you could reach out too. If you want to have a private conversation with me or with Chris because you've got something in detail you want to get to the bottom of, then we're more than happy to do that as well. So anyway, Chris, I'll get ahead of you this time. Until next time, my friend, see ya.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. Don't forget that we are constantly updating our resources inside the Wealth Builders membership site to help you create, build, and protect your wealth. Head over to wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership right now for free access. That's wealthbuilders.co.uk/membership.